Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast!
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's something special.
I had never tried that before, and, I was modeling it after that boxing announcer that says, let's
No, I think we all,
run.
yep, we all know.
This episode is brought to you in part by Riata Pharmaceuticals.
Kyle, we have a lot to cover today, and I'm noticing as we're kind of putting notes together, there's a lot of reference here to episode 214. So I first want to say a big shout out and thank you to Brian W. He recently emailed us a couple times, but one that specifically sticks out to me is, Kyle, in episode 214, you embarrassingly told the world about your repeated Grubhub mistake.
Yeah.
And I was like, we've heard this situation before, right? Well, Brian emailed us like 2 days later with the specific episode number where we heard the exact same, but albeit somewhat different, incident that you found yourself in. So episode 134 or episode 214, either one, if you want to hear Kyle's embarrassing mistake of sending his Grubhub delivery to the wrong address, it's a must hear. Both of them are.
Well, and I think the remarkable thing about that is that, Sean, you and I couldn't remember. We're like, what was that episode? Yeah. I think it happened, but I don't know. And then Brian emails us. He's like, here, let me help you out here.
Not only the episode number, but the episode title and everything about it. So, Brian, thank you for listening and for helping make my job of making fun of Kyle a little bit easier. Kyle, I also wanted to bring up a story we've heard before. You don't have to go through it all again, but some things have happened since our last time talking about StorQuest that I just wanted to bring up a few items, right? So, again, in the episode 214, I talked a little bit about my disappointment with StorQuest and their changes. Anyway, I've made a phone call to their 1-800, quote-unquote, corporate call center. And, dude, I kid you not, as I'm talking to this lady and expressing my disappointment, she says, "You're picking at the small things that don't matter and won't change."
What? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're picking at small things that don't matter and won't change. If you don't like storing your stuff with us, it's one of those things you can just store your stuff somewhere else.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding you.
Sean, I am feeling this right now because when you told that story, I had a pit in my stomach because it was basically a matter of like, am I going to be able to bring my chair on the next cruise or not?
Exactly. And so that's where they're at. That's the attitude and the energy from the corporate call center, right? And I'm like,
cow,
mind blown. So much so, I don't remember what I said, but pretty much the conversation came to an end within 2 or 3 minutes because I'm like, okay, obviously I'm going nowhere. And if this is the corporate call center, I'm a fish out of water. Nothing is going to change. And this is just the way they do business, right? So anyway, I tagged that on social and I kind of expressed like, it's very cold-hearted and just not okay. So I posted online and tagged StorQuest, and we got a few comments. Anyway, whoever runs their social media for StorQuest, they did reach out, and there was a message on Instagram that says, "Oh, we're sincerely sorry about this this particular incident, blah blah blah." And I don't remember all the details, but I responded back with, "This person I talked to was from your corporate call center. Like, you could probably, if you record the calls like you say you do." I called it. I think I sent him a screenshot. I dialed at 5:31 on Wednesday, whatever the date was, and the call lasted 10 minutes or whatever. And her name was Janelle. I'm sure they probably don't get a million phone calls at that exact time, right?
Yeah.
So it would be easy to find and easy for them to track down who it is. Because I think in the question on social, they were like, "Oh my God, who?" So sorry, like, who'd you talk to or something? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I was like, are you guys... I mean, you're obviously just full of crap. You're not going to do anything about it. There's no response. That was a week ago, and they didn't follow up. There's nothing, right? And I'm going to top it all off. That particular site, mine, still shows on all their signage 24-hour access. All of their signs.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And so anyway, it's just obviously a terrible method for how they approach business. But who am I, right? They're probably hundreds of millions. They're a real estate mogul, if you will. They're all over the place. I'm pretty sure they're not worried about me and a few of my friends that are disgusted with the way they're doing business. But anyway.
It's just crazy because the more you peel the onion, the more you find out how rotten it is, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like I figured you would go down and then at some point you would uncover a reasonable person, right? But it hasn't happened.
You've got me going on the phone. I just keep asking, like, how was I supposed to know? How would I know? It's not on your website. I haven't found it. I was told to go on your website. And the girl, Janelle is her name. She's like, I asked her, I'm like, could you tell me where that is on the website? She's like, well, did you go look for it? I'm like, oh my God. Yes, I did look for it, and I can't find it. Well, I don't know what's on the website and what's not, but anyway, and she also made the comment, because I kept asking, how am I supposed to know? Like, if I know it, I can plan around it, it's no big deal. Right. And she goes, well, you would have known the first time you didn't have access. I'm like, what? She goes, since you've tried and now you've been told this is your access window, now you know. So figure it out. She didn't say so figure it out. That's me adding. But that was the energy, the attitude that I was getting. It was very much like, well, you would have known the first time you tried and were denied.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Good to know. The following message is brought to you by Riata Pharmaceuticals.
My favorite day is just around the corner,
Kyle, your birthday isn't until October.
Okay, fair, but my second favorite day is this month, May 20th.
Oh, well, why didn't you just say that then? May 20th is Friedrich's Ataxia Awareness Day.
And this FA Awareness Day is extra special for the FA community because we finally have a treatment option.
Yep, we sure do. Skyclarys, or Mavaloxolone, 50 milligram capsules is the first and only FDA-approved treatment for FA patients 16 years and older. And believe me, excitement is growing.
Yeah, 20 years of hard work have paid off.
If you or a loved one has FA, be sure to talk to your doctor to see if Skyclarys is right for you.
And to learn more about Skyclarys and keep up with all the exciting news, Visit skyclaris.com.
Before taking Skyclaris, tell your healthcare provider about your medical conditions and medicines you take. Skyclaris may cause serious side effects, including an increase in liver enzymes in your blood, increase in a blood protein which tells how well your heart is working, and changes in cholesterol levels. Your doctor will test these levels before and during treatment with Skyclaris. The most common side effects of Skyclaris include increased liver enzymes, headache, nausea, stomach pain, tiredness, diarrhea, and muscle pain. Call your doctor if you have any side effects. For additional information about Skyclaris, please see the full prescribing information and patient product information at www.skyclaris.com. This ad was brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
Anyway, so that phone call is unfolding on my drive home. And it's a very long day. I'm really frustrated and angry, but also disheartened. Like, I just want to cry. Like, are you guys kidding me? This is how you want to do business. So anyway, I go to a random Starbucks, one that I might go to once every couple of months. It's not the one I go to regularly. So I walk in. I don't know anybody. Nobody knows me. The lady behind the counter taking the order is obviously pregnant and probably gonna have a baby any day now. Like, she is obvious. I don't make a comment because, don't.
Yeah.
I order a drink and a little snack because I know I'm gonna sit down and do some research on this StorQuest and, kind of vent a little bit and get it out of me. So I sit down and I'm on my phone for a few minutes, and next thing I know, this lady at Starbucks, their pregnant worker, brings to my table, brings me my drink and my snack. Without asking. It wasn't like they called my name and I didn't hear it.
Right.
She just, without any hesitation, when they were both ready, she walked them over to me. And that was just a very stark difference between, what this little chain is getting from me is, maybe $7.
Right.
But the StorQuest company, they're getting $150 from me every month. And there's just the dichotomy. Is that the right word?
Yep.
The dichotomy of the level of service between a company who does not care, they're just in it to get rich, versus a company who's in it for money, but they approach it differently. They take care of their guests, and it was just mind-blowing. I think about the comment I made about Chipotle, also in 214. Without hesitation, the lady was like, would you like me to bring this to the table for you? Just that level of service and how it exists in places you might think it should exist. Because I imagine the profit margins at Starbucks are a lot thinner than the profit margin at the storage company. Yet, Starbucks and Chipotle and many others, they just seem to care about people and the overall experience more so than StorQuest or their parent company, the William Warren Group.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what industry it is, right? You named 3 different businesses. 2 of them which you had a good experience and 1 not. But it's about caring, right? Yep. Like, caring for someone else and doing good service. It doesn't matter what the business is.
Kyle, you're absolutely right. And before I get too worked up, let's just move this episode along.
Sounds good.
Well, for those of you who've been listening all season long, we've been implementing a mental health segment for season 9. And although we've said it before, we're finding a lot of value in these conversations. Kyle and I aren't experts. We all know that. We've said it 100 times, it feels like. But there's something about bringing these conversations to the table that just helps us manage and navigate the situations we're up against.
Sean, this segment is just me and you because I mentioned something in an episode a little while ago about my wheelchair getting away from me.
Yeah.
So it was late at night, and I had just gone to the store after getting back from a trip, and I was in my manual wheelchair, and I had my groceries on my lap, and I was going down the ramp out of my car. And my groceries started to fall. So I reflexively grabbed them, right? Mm-hmm. But that means my hands went off of the push rims on my wheelchair.
Yep.
So I started going down the ramp, and it got sideways, and it stopped my wheelchair because it was wedged between the sides of the ramp. And then I flew off the front. My groceries went everywhere, and my chair became unstuck once I got launched out of it.
Yeah.
And then it rolled down the ramp and down away from me, like, I don't know, probably 50 yards.
Jeez.
So I'm sitting there, not really hurt, but certainly my ego was hurt.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Why didn't I think about this? And like, I took my hands off of the control of the wheelchair, and yeah. So I was like, all right, I can easily just scoot on my butt over to my chair and grab it. And on my way there, though, I found myself thinking, I hope nobody sees me. And I don't know if I was embarrassed or if I just wanted to do this myself. I knew that once I get to my chair, everything's fine. Like, no one's even going to know what happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, like, I was thinking to myself, I hope no one sees me. It never even crossed my mind to call a neighbor to help me out. I don't know if it was self-sufficiency or embarrassment, or what do you think? Have you been in a situation like that?
Only one time, but I mentioned it was in an empty parking lot and middle of, evening time. It was dark, but quiet. So not quite the same situation, because as you're telling the story, I'm just picturing it. I didn't fall out of my chair, so there was no, tussle there. There's no, I don't have to brush myself off. There's no discomfort. I pulled my chair out of the car, and as I was setting it up, it rolled away from me. I turned my back to grab the cushion or something out of the car, and by the time I turned back around, the wheelchair was, 50 yards away or whatever. So I'm like, oh, oops. But I was at my car, so for me it was easy. It took a minute or a few seconds, because I'm like, how in the world am I going to get it? But it was an empty parking lot, so I just hobbled my way back to the driver's seat and backed up to my chair, right? So for me, it was easy. But I think you bring up some good points, because things like that are probably going to happen at some point, right? I'm wondering, if you're telling this, okay, is it embarrassing? Is it ego? Is it stubbornness and me wanting to be independent? What is it that goes into remedying that situation that you find yourself in? And I don't know if there's an answer, but you bring up a good point in all the mental tug of war, and shoot, even emotional tug of war, because for me, it's a reminder of life is hard. It's a reminder of this disease, that's a bummer. It's just kind of rubbing it all in, like, this is your life now. Ha ha. Maybe not that cynical, but to me, I see that as a big mental hurdle because of all the different elements that go into it.
It's a really good point. And also, at some level, I don't want to bring somebody else into that mental situation, right? I'm like, Yeah, I just need to cool off for a second because there's so much in this moment. Like you said, everything comes together right there. The whole disease is like embodied in that situation. And I just need to do this on my own. No one else is going to understand.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, which that goes against the reason why we're doing the mental health segment, right? When you keep it all in and keep it to yourself, that's where the control and the power takes over and things really begin to eat away at you. So I appreciate you bringing it up because for me, it's a reminder that we can all fall in those traps of making things worse when we keep it to ourselves. Not that I'm not saying that's always going to happen and it's always the case, but I guess part of the reason why we talk about it is so that those things don't take over our mental health.
Yeah, and this is case in point right here because that thing still happened. It was still a bad situation, and it's still in my mind. But now that I have a friend to understand, like you understood so much that you could describe the situation and even help me think about it in a different way. And that helps. It doesn't change the situation, like it said, but it certainly helps. So,
well, our hope is that these conversations also help listeners along the way. Whether you can relate to this specific incident or something else in this season, we find a lot of value and we absolutely hope you do as well. Remember, you got this. All right, Kyle, you made a comment in episode 214. Side note, folks, if you haven't listened to episode 214, do that. It might be helpful. I don't think you have to, but you'd get a lot of context for what we're talking about throughout this episode.
Yeah.
Kyle, you made a comment somewhere in episode 214 about the apples being too high or too far away at the grocery store.
Yep.
And how you just want your apple. Anyway, it just got me thinking. Throughout that week, and there have been a couple things over the last several weeks that have stuck out to me. Because I thought to myself, if the shelf were lower, it would be easier for you, right? More accessible.
Right.
But the lower the shelf is, the harder it is for me to walk around. So it just got me thinking, what might be accessible for you isn't accessible for me. And of course, there has to be that on a larger scale in the world, right? I'm sure, just a minor example of the Apple table for Kyle in a wheelchair and Sean, who's got balance issues but not in a wheelchair. Those are, simple, if you will. But I imagine there's got to be some other situations where it's accessible for one person, but maybe harder and more difficult for somebody else. So there's a part of me that I guess isn't surprised how our world hasn't figured it out yet, because most of the time it's always me complaining, like, I don't understand it, it's not that hard. But in reality, maybe it is because it's not just one person they're making adjustments for.
Right.
It's 8 million or 1,000, however many people frequent that facility or play in that park or whatever it may be. So I thought we'd spend a few minutes, Kyle, trying to tackle different nuances that are helpful for you or helpful for Johnny, but aren't helpful for Susie.
Yeah, I'm immediately thinking of a distinction because there is a difference between something that is inconvenient and something that is impossible. Such as, like, I use sinks and things all the time that are not specifically for wheelchair users. It's quote, not accessible, but I make it work, right?
Sure.
If there's a sink or something that's too low, it works for me, but it's too low for you, then that's inconvenient, but you could still wash your hand. Like,
sure.
So I think that deserves, like, for example, if there's a curb and no curb cut, like going into a convenience store or something, that literally means that there are some people that can't get into that store at all.
It's a good point. It's inconvenient for me, but I use the walker so I can pick it up and figure it out.
Right.
But for somebody like you, it's impossible. You're not going into that store because you can't get out of your chair.
So I think it's important to keep that in mind when we're thinking about accessibility, because some of this gets at, like, all right, it's accessible for somebody who uses a wheelchair, but it's inconvenient for somebody who's able-bodied.
Yeah.
So then, it's a matter of convenience versus possibility. So
I appreciate you putting it that way. I've never thought of it in those terms, inconvenient versus impossible. Because when I think about the wheelchair ramp or the elevator, in a lot of cases, those aren't the most convenient. You would gotta walk out of your way to go find the ramp or to go find the elevator. But it still makes it possible. So I'm okay with giving up a few extra moments of my time to get to a elevator because it's safe versus, not having the ability to go up to the third floor or to go up to TSA. Anyway, Kyle, I want to talk a little bit. You and I recently went on a trip, and we had a fabulous time. Our hosts were incredible, and everything was great. However, there are a couple things we wanted to highlight in our experiences beyond their control. So in no way or shape or form are we saying anything about this event or the host that took care of us. But we want to share some real-life examples that we would like hotels in particular to think about. We are at a hotel that is known across the globe that had a couple, in my opinion, had some room for improvement.
Yep.
And I want to just call things to the surface so that maybe other listeners can relate, and perhaps down the road, there's some changes in the world of travel and hotel.
Yeah.
This particular hotel had a few things that didn't make sense. In fact, you took a picture of one.
Yep.
So I'm going to let you talk about the first thing you noticed when you walked into your accessible room.
Right. So, accessible room. It's got a roll-in shower. So it's for people that use wheelchairs, basically.
Yep.
I go in and I see the bed, and it's so high. It's the highest bed I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to need a step stool if I could use a step stool to get into this bed. And I just thought it was funny because the bed is so high, but people that are using it, I mean, for me, I can stand up on my legs if I'm holding on to something.
Sure.
But a lot of people that use wheelchairs, their legs aren't going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then where are you at? For me, it was an inconvenience, and I could make it happen, right?
Sure.
But for some people, they're not going to be able to.
Yep.
I just thought it was funny that this bed was so high.
I noticed the bed height, right? It was inconvenient for me, but manageable. But it was the first thing I'm like, why is the bed so high? And so I just started thinking, when somebody designed the room or whoever chose to buy the beds, what was going through their head? Was there a specific reason? Is there some mobility issue or, some other disability that a tall bed is more convenient? I don't know the answer to that. I would, if a listener can help me out, please do. But I just can't think of any situation.
No idea.
I do think the bed height was perfect for, say, Michael Jordan or LeBron James, who was 6'7", right? They would probably love the bed. There was a mirror across the room, but I noticed when I sat on the bed, feet dangling, I looked in the mirror, and it appeared to me there was a good 7 or 8 inches between my feet and the floor.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, this, maybe 1 inch is fine, or 2, but holy cow. Anyway, we have the same floor plan, but just different rooms. I walked in and noticed the hardwood floor. That was the first thing that jumped out to me. And for me, I feel less comfortable on the hard floor, right? In the middle of the night, I'm barefoot, or if I have socks on, that just makes it harder for me to get around the room. But if I were in my manual wheelchair, it would make it easier, right? So that was another one of those, okay, it's great for some, but really kind of not preferred and a little more risky for others.
So, in this hotel room, let's talk about the shower, because it was a rolling shower. You noticed it first, but I also went in there and was like, what? The shower bench is on one side of the shower, long ways, and then all the way on the other side, probably 7 feet away, maybe, is the controls to the shower. So, say you sit on the bench, unless your arm is 7 feet long,
go gadget.
You can't reach. You can't reach the controls of the shower, and I don't even think the shower would have reached all the way over to the bench, like the flow of the water. I don't think it would have reached all the way over to the bench.
Even the handheld hose was kind of short, because I did try it. Yeah, absolutely. On top of that, you start thinking, okay, maybe it's getting comfortable before I turn the water on. But in this case, you can. And then once the water is on, now everything's a little more slippery. So there's just no easy way to manage that kind of setup. I also took notice of the shower was incredibly spacious. However, that also means the one and only grab bar in this shower was a good, I would say, 4-foot stretch from outside the shower where it's dry and safe to the grab bar. So for me to let go of my walker and to step in that cold tile and grab the bar, like there's a good 8 to 12 inches where I'm just hoping I don't miss as I lean over, because there was nothing else for me to grab onto between being outside the shower and being inside the shower.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know. I'd love to hear a different perspective, because in my mind and in our experience, these things are not nuanced. Yeah. It's not a small thing that it's like, oh, it would be better if it was this way. No, it literally, like, if you're sitting on the bench, it's impossible to reach the shower. And if you don't let go of your walker, it's impossible to reach the grab bar. So these are not small things.
Nuanced would be, I don't like your towels. Or you didn't give me enough towels. Or the soap you guys supply it smells funny. Those are all things we can get over, right? But when you're tired, anyway, it is silly. Anyway, all of this ties to a weird thing they were promoting that I happened to notice on the side of their shuttle. You know, they have 3 or 4 different, free Wi-Fi, free bottled water, conveniently located because it was real close to the airport. But one of the things they were promoting also, quote-unquote shows a room that works. And that just stuck out to me because I'm like, what does that mean? And who does it work for? Because right now, I don't think your room works. So part of me wants to know, the marketing individual that came up with that as something to promote. What exactly? Is it because they have more than one outlet? Is it because they have a lot of good lighting around the... what is it that makes you think this is a room worth saying, a room that works?
I think maybe it's a disconnect between the marketing person and actually having been in one of those rooms before.
Anyway, I mean, ultimately, there is nothing to solve. But the hope is awareness grows around some of these little things, and improvements can be made. This hotel wasn't old. I would guess within the last 10 years. I could be wrong, but
that's my impression.
Definitely not more than 20. So it's certainly new enough to where those things really, I don't think, should be concerns. They shouldn't be issues. But they are. And we were at dinner with our host, and one of them made the comment, well, don't you think hotels have a person that they consult with, or, what, I don't remember exactly. I certainly see that as being a job that makes sense. But when I experience hotels like this, I can't help but think that position doesn't exist, right? Or they're consulting with, who are they consulting with? Who's helping them decide, yes, this is a good ADA plan versus, yeah, let's get a bed that's 6 feet tall. That makes sense. I don't understand.
Yeah, and, when we were talking to Mary Caruso, we were talking to her about accessible travel. She was saying that if you have a problem, there's this, I forget what she called it, but it's like a caseworker kind of that you can call.
Yep.
And the plane, at the airport, and the plane will not leave until you're able to talk to that person. And that would be an incredible position for a hotel, right? Somebody that you could call to be like, hey, this is not working for me. Can you help me here?
Yep. 100%. I mean, there's certainly been great experiences at hotels where you can tell somebody paid attention to all the details. But this particular one, they just left a lot of room for error and left a lot of room for things to be desired. And I guess one last thing I'll point out, not necessarily about this hotel, but the overall travel experience. I personally don't need a curb cut in this stage of my life. Although I certainly use them when they're available because it's safer. It just makes more sense. Anyway, I'm out on the curb at the airport waiting for my Uber, and I look around and I can't help but notice in this area where it's Ubers and airport shuttles, hotel shuttles, there's absolutely no curb cut. So for somebody in our chair, it would be darn near impossible for them to safely board a shuttle or an Uber. For me, it's just inconvenient, but it grabbed my attention. I'm like, holy cow. And I looked down the entire curb. In fact, I got a picture, I think, of that captures 80% of the curb and the length of this curb that just shows no safe way to get on and off the curb. I found that surprising. Granted, that's the airport, and I imagine this airport probably is 40 or 50 years old. But still, it can't be that hard to spend a couple grand and create a curb cut. I feel like that's possible.
Yeah, I've seen that in New York City where they've cut the curb to make a curb cut.
Overall, we as a society can do better. There's gotta be easy ways for it. Speaking of doing better, Kyle, I wanted to wrap up with some comments on my experience with Delta Airlines.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but I gave up on Delta years ago. I had I don't remember what happened. I just remember being so frustrated with Delta that I said I'm never giving them my money again. And that's been true for years. In fact, they still don't get my money. Because I've only flown them, I think, twice since then because of the destination, and that flight's always been, the expense has always been covered. So I'm like, whatever. If I'm not paying for it, let's do it. So this particular one, I had a couple of options, but I thought, you know what? Let's just see. Let's give them a shot. It's been 4 or 5 years. And holy cow, I was impressed.
Nice.
You know, not too long ago, you talked about American Airlines and the process they make you go through. Well, but Delta, when I booked the ticket, I had marked wheelchair, and that was it. I marked it one time and moved. I never thought about it again. Well, when I got to the airport, the guy asked me as I'm checking in, he's like, do you need a chair to get to the gate? And I'm like, no, I'll be fine with my walker. However, is there any kind of inspection tag you need to do? He's like, no, they'll take care of that at the gate. So I'm like, okay. I go to the gate. This part's kind of nuanced. They were like, oh, did you get an inspection downstairs? And I'm like, no, they told me to do it here. So anyway, I think even Delta is a bit unclear, like who should be doing the inspection?
Yeah.
But they were like, oh, yeah, we'll just do it real quick. They did it real quick. I pre-boarded. It was fine. When I got to my, what do they call that? When the plane stops, but you're not there yet?
Taxi.
Layover. No, like
layover.
Like you got,
okay.
yeah. So I get to my layover, and as I'm exiting the plane, there's a person there holding a sign with a wheelchair for Sean. And I'm like, uh-oh. Did I do that? Because I didn't need a chair, but I somehow, I felt the need to let him know I have a walker. And there wasn't a walker mobility device option.
Right.
So I marked wheelchair. Anyway, as I'm walking to my layover, it's a long walk to my second gate. And I thought to myself, I probably should have used that wheelchair. Mm-hmm. But it just stuck out to me how easy it was and how convenient Delta made it to give me a chair whenever it was needed. Even though I didn't need it. I had marked that I did. And their follow-through and their execution was flawless.
Wow. Nice.
On my way home, I used the wheelchair on the layover because I didn't know how far it would be.
Right.
Holy cow. I am so glad I used the wheelchair and I just held the walker because it probably took 15 minutes for that guy to push me in the wheelchair. And my layover, I had about 55 minutes between gates.
Yeah.
I would have been stressing out, and I may have made my flight, but it would have been nerve-wracking. And as you know, and others know, the more worked up you get and the more stressed you are, the harder it is to remain balanced. So I don't know. Anyway, I was just...
You would have made it, but you would have been a jerk to everyone there. Or I would have anyway.
Yeah. And I would have risked rolling my ankle or falling and hurting a wrist or even worse. Yeah. You never know. But anyway, all that to say, I'm impressed. Either for me, I'm in a different place, or Delta has really come a long way since the last time I flew with them. Either way, I enjoyed my experience.
You know, it'll be interesting to maybe revisit this conversation in 5 years or so and see if it's a different situation, right? Because I feel like leadership changes or whatever happens and things change, right?
Yep. processes advance. Who knows what it is? And I'm sure there are listeners who probably hate Delta and listeners who probably think Delta is the only way they go. Again, I opened it up with, we'd love to hear your experience. Who is reliable for you, especially if you're using a chair or a tank, an oxygen tank, or whatever it may be. Who's been your preferred airline of choice when having to take on the tedious, stressful task of traveling with a disability, whether it's for you or somebody you care for?
Sean, there's a lot there. It's endless, and I think it's helpful when we bring these things to the surface and just talk about them. Partly, like we were saying earlier, it's cathartic. It's how we release, but also it's practical. Maybe things will change. Actually, no. You know what? Things are not going to change unless we talk about them first.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for this conversation, but we got to move on. Who do you have to thank today?
I've got two. First of all, I'll say thank you to Delta and the smooth travel experience I had. But mainly, I'm saying thank you to a random customer at a laundromat. I had to go to a laundromat recently because the dryer at home wasn't working. And with some work and a trip, I had to take advantage of some time to get laundry done. So I went to a laundromat. Anyway, while there, I had leaned up against something wrong, and I ended up drawing blood on my arm. It cut into my arm a little bit.
Whoa.
And I noticed it a minute or two later, and it was like dripping already. It was like a lot of blood. So I grabbed paper towel, and I'm holding it, and I'm just standing still for a minute. Like, okay, I want to get my laundry going, but I also need to take care of this wound. So I finally get it to a place where it's under control, and I quickly throw one-handed, throw my laundry in the washer, because I just want to start that clock, right? Mm-hmm. Well, as I'm loading it, some random lady walks over to me. Kind of startles me because I didn't see her coming. But she was like, "Hey, I'm Kate. May I offer you a Band-Aid?" And I look at her and I realize she doesn't work there. She's just some lady. And she would not just say, "I saw you holding your arm. I assume you're bleeding." She goes, "I know that look." And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes I am. I would love a Band-Aid. So she had walked out to her car and came in with this little mobile first aid kit that had everything. It was a pretty good size little first aid kit. And she goes, "I never lay home without my first aid kit. It's always in my car."
Wow.
And she opens it up. And "What size do you need?" And she just played nurse for a minute. And I'm like, holy cow, you're incredibly sweet. And so I'm saying thank you to Kate for just being aware and being willing to help. And she was just somebody else who was also there doing her laundry, just like me.
That's awesome. And you know what? I'm thinking you never would have run into this person and had that pleasant encounter if the laundry wasn't working, right? Yeah. You could be pissed about the dryer not working, or you could just be like, maybe it'll lead to something else. Yeah.
So anyway,
nice.
Thank you, Kate. Kyle, who are you saying thank you to today?
I'm saying thank you to another one of my neighbors that I don't think I have mentioned before. Her name is Melanie, and she took my garbage out yesterday. I was cleaning out my fridge, and you know, when that happens, you've got like an old banana and some leftovers and all this stuff, and all of a sudden the garbage gets really heavy. And I was like, I could probably do this, but I might have trouble lifting it up into the garbage can when I get there. So I texted Melanie, and she took my garbage out, no problem. So it really made my day a lot better. Just one thing off my list. Thank you, Melanie.
If somebody recently said a small lift for me could be a big help to somebody else. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember her exact words, but that sticks out to me. So that those little things, it only took her a minute or two and a few steps, but that's a big deal for you. So, Melanie, and for everybody that does little things like that, it's a bigger deal than you'll ever know. I also want to wrap up with saying thank you to our new friends, Lauren and Sydney, who are the hosts that we talked about, who gave us an incredible couple days in their city with their company. So thank you, Lauren and Sydney. This episode has been made possible in part by Riata Pharmaceuticals. We encourage you to visit our show notes at twodisableddudes.com. If you're enjoying the show, please be sure to share it with a friend and click that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Season 9 is coming to an end. Only a couple episodes left, and we're looking forward to them. Until next time, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.